When does a system or any kind of a generation of games become considered retro? I see the term applied and tossed around all the time, but I never know where's the tipping scale for this. Where does it begin and end? And does something become even more retro the older that it gets? Does it become super vintage? Does it become archaic? Does it become a fucking electronic antique? I'm just curious about this because this is something I see happen. I see people apply the term to things that they grew up with in their childhood, but they aren't even that old, but they'll still consider it retro. Then I have people that consider everything from past generations to be considered retro. Now, is this all that important of a topic or a subject matter? Not really, but it's still something interesting to note because, I mean, to me, I've always considered everything going back to, like, the Intellivision and Atari and ColecoVision and all that shit, going all the way up till, I'd say about the Dreamcast. That to me is all retro. So all those generations, that personally to me is retro. Going forward after that with PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube, despite the fact that they're pretty fucking old now, I don't consider them quite retro yet. And it's harder to consider them that whenever I look at that for a lot of people in gaming is kind of what set the bar for what we have now. If you look at games that you play today and then look at everything that came out that generation, I mean, the only thing that's a large, glaring difference between them is graphics, really. Whenever you sit down and you break it down to the most fundamental basics, it all started in that generation. But everything prior to that, it was a whole new ball game. Hell, the entire gaming industry and all of those gens was very different compared to how it is now. So to me, is PlayStation 1 retro? Most definitely. Nintendo 64 again? Most definitely. Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo? Of course they are. But PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube? No. PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360? Again, no. I can't draw any kind of correlation between them. Now, as more time progresses, when we get a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox 2, I don't know what the fuck they're gonna plan on calling the next one, and Nintendo NX and all that shit going forward, well, I consider those things to be retro. Well, yeah, because you figure at the time whenever those generations, like when PlayStation 1 was out, I considered Atari to be retro and vintage and old and all that shit because it was. But at the time, 32-bit reigned supreme. So to me, that made a lot of sense, but I think it's all just based off of the individual. You know, these are all from my own personal perspective and my own opinion. Now, can some things just, without a doubt, be considered retro and old? Yeah, all 8-bit games and all 16-bit games and like all the Atari shit, I don't think anyone is going to argue or dispute or try to even debate whether or not they are considered to be retro. Now, if you tried saying, oh no, I don't know about that, like, dude, these things, we're talking old as fuck. We're talking about 80s to very early 90s. You know, we're talking over 20 plus years. That's a long fucking time. And then think about all the technical advancements that we've had within the world of gaming. The entire industry has changed for the better. I mean, 3D gaming became a big boom during the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. We had a very good grasp of it. Nowadays, it's just taken for granted, you know. And 2D ended up making a really big resurgence, all thanks to PC gaming and the entire indie game scene, which I think is really awesome, which is a throwback to old retro games, but it's a style it's classic, and it works really well. And for me, a lot of times, you know, whenever I see little 2D games, I can't even consider them all the way just, you know, riding the coattails of people that are longing for a much more simpler time. To me, it's just a matter of perspective and how something controls. Because if you put that into a 3D plane, would it control quite the same? Wouldn't it feel quite the same? So, you know, if I try running around in a 3D game using a D-pad, it doesn't work nearly as well. Now, in a 2D game using a D-pad, that shit works phenomenally. I can't even use the fucking analog sticks in 2D platformers. Like, if I was trying to play Shovel Knight or some shit, or Axiom Verge or some other fucking game like that, yeah, I'd fumble and fuck up all over the place. Give me a D-pad? No, I'm more quick. I'm on point, able to go and make that shit happen, without a doubt. Yeah, this isn't even including all the stuff with the handhelds, like, you know, the original Game Boy, Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color, the Game Gear, the Atari Lynx. Those are only ones I can think of that even matter whatsoever. I guess we can toss in the Neo Geo Pocket Color because it's still technically old enough. Those I would consider to be retro. You know, is Game Boy Advance? I don't personally believe so. Same thing with, you know, like the PSP, for example. I'll throw in the Nomad to that, but that's more just a portable Sega Genesis. Same thing with the Turbo Express. But those, I consider all that shit to be retro, but I don't know, this was a topic that I thought was kind of neat. Because I've seen lots of arguments and debates, and then just interesting discussion about what people consider. If you ask somebody who's a lot younger, they're going to have completely different answers. Then again, they might have grown up with all the retro shit thanks to having, like, older brothers, sisters, maybe because of their parents or whatever. So their opinion might be swayed more towards what somebody who was alive in those eras and playing those games might end up thinking and saying, kind of like what I'm doing right now. You know, but I thought this was something to just be kind of a fun discussion. But for all of you out there, where does retro begin and end? And is that something that you think is just applied all too often? I see people wanting to just jump on the retro bandwagon, but, oh, is this considered retro yet? Why the fuck are you asking people? Do you think that that's making something suddenly cooler? Like, it's now becoming niche because you're doing that, and now it's got this underground cult following just because you're considering it to be retro, which I just think it's kind of weird. Don't like something just because it's old. That doesn't make sense. Like it because it's good. I thought that was the entire point. It's entertainment, not just X amount of years has passed. All right, since we got past that point, now I can enjoy it even more and boast about it. That's fucking silly. Stop with all that fucktarded bullshit. No. So, maybe you feel like me, maybe you completely disagree, maybe you have a different perspective on this, maybe you don't really give a shit and just clicked on the video for fun. I have absolutely no motherfucking clue. Either way, this is AlphaOmegaSin, as always, nerds, nerdettes, and gamers game the fuck on.